A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 58th edition of the Together for Education webinars brought to you by Notebook. Months ago, it was March or April this year, we were first told that things would be shut down because of the COVID-19 pandemic that was coming our way. We all expected maybe a week, maybe a month of schools being shut down. Very soon it was clear that that was not going to be the case. We went from lockdown 1 to lockdown 2, and it went on like the sequels rivaling the Rocky movies. Today, we stand at a place where we have adapted to a whole new system. As we have heard numerous times during the course of these webinars, while schools are shut, schooling is not. We have adapted to online learning, we have adopted various learning tools, and going digital has perhaps become a way of our lives. We are calling it the new normal. However, today we talk about how we develop students to stand out of the normal and become leaders. Today's topic, leading the way, is something very close to our hearts, and I'm sure our esteemed panel and our speakers would take you through a wonderful journey of how you as educators can help groom leaders in your classroom. Before we move on, we at Notebook are a digital learning platform. We create short, engaging videos that are tailored to the school curriculum. And students have access to these videos when they're studying from home on their personal devices. And you teachers can also use these videos when you're conducting your classes, whether online or offline. What I will do now is play you a short snippet of one of the Notebook videos that I think pertains to this topic of leadership in a very big way.
This was Gandhi's first notable public appearance after his return to India in 1915. The inauguration of the Benares Hindu University was a moment of national pride because it had been an entirely Indian initiative conceived, built and funded by Indians. But Gandhi noticed that something was amiss in this happy celebration of nationalism. Only the princes, the philanthropists, dignitaries and important Congress leaders like Annie Besant were attending the event. They did not represent the mass of middle class, lower middle class and poor sections of the Indian society living in the villages. So Gandhi reminded the elite and privileged invitees at BHU about the laboring poor and had been forgotten and underrepresented. He stressed the importance of peasants and villagers whose contribution was invaluable in forming the Indian economy and society. Gandhi understood early that building an Indian government would be impossible without the support of the common men and women of India. Indian nationalism could not belong only to the doctors, lawyers and the rich landlords. It had to be broader and more diverse for it to succeed. Mahatma led most of his nationalist campaigns in India after his famous speech at Benares. Before that, he had lived abroad for 22 years and engaged in grassroots activism in South Africa. His work in South Africa had shaped his political ideology, which he then applied to the Indian national movement. A peasant from Champaran in Bihar approached Gandhi at the annual Congress held in Lucknow in December 1916. He requested Gandhi to help fight the injustices which the indigo planters in Champaran were facing in the hands of the British rulers. Mahatma Gandhi.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was a short clip of one of the Notebook videos. There are more than 10,000 such videos available on our platform. Should you choose to tell your students about using this as a learning aid when they're studying at home. Well, with that, it is now time to move on to our session for today. Our first speaker today is Mr. Philip Burrett. Mr. Burrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education. He served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Student Welfare, Dean of Activities, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Burrett qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist. Sir, privileged to have you with us. Over to you.
Thank you, Shobayu. Am I audible, Shobayu?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. We can see you loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Um, Great topic. Good evening to all of you and the entire Notebook family. Abhishek, Achin. Good evening to Sujata. Glad to see you back again, Sujata, and Mrs. Saha, as well as all our listeners and viewers who've tuned in. Okay, so this topic, the first thing is, let me talk about some of the myths and misnomers concerning leadership. Children pick up a lot of wrong ideas from what they see in films. They're film heroes and war movie heroes and Superman, etc. So the best way to define leadership is to define what it is not. And I think that shouting and yelling and ordering and being the class monitor and waving the ruler around is not leadership. Leaders don't shout too much. If you look at Trump and Hitler, I think they did a lot of shouting in their day. But a leader who shouts is a compeller. And children have this idea that the big drug boss or the class bully is a leader. And they are impressed by the personality ethic of leadership and not so much the character ethic. Now, they also somehow, when they talk about leadership, they always think about leading others. But leadership begins with, I think, leading ourselves. Leaders like Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and Jesus and Narayan Murthy, they had some qualities about them. Now, you see, what they did was they put themselves first, always. And the Indian Military Academy motto is wonderful. It says, we put the welfare of our men that we command before us always and every time. The second thing they do is they stand up for others. Unlike people like the Lehman Brothers, who fled, leaving a lot of very, very poor pensioners and people who had their life savings in their bank bankrupt. They left them. But leaders stay by their people. Leaders also see the gold in others and polish it. In other words, as a leader, we need to see the best in others and bring it out. Also, leaders are not bothered about personal safety. They are usually assassinated, crucified, or killed in a number of ways. They also listen to others. And even the least of the team, even the newest member of a staff, can have suggestions that need to be listened to. Leaders also take decisions that are sometimes very difficult, very unpopular. And they're not afraid of showing their vulnerable side. They take responsibility. Very important. Leaders own up to what they did. And last of all in that list, sometimes they have to have some very difficult conversations with other team members. So this is what I think as teachers, we need to tell our students, that leaders are not people who boss around, but these are qualities that they have to inculcate over the years. In the next slide, I have just mentioned 4 of the common forms of leadership. There are many types, but what is important is that the children should see that all these types are important according to the situation. Although most of us have a preferred stance, a preferred style. Some people are authoritarian, some are democratic, some are laissez-faire, some are impressionistic. But I think, let me give you an example from a rafting expedition. There are times when I have to, as a leader, be the despotic authoritarian leader by ordering people in a rapid to do this, to do that, pull back, go front, put your, tighten your helmet strap. So I take the stance of an authority. So there are sometimes I could be democratic when I decide who do you want to have in a boat, where do you want to sit, what sort of meal do you want to have when you come back. So I leave it open to a democratic decision. There are times when I allow everyone to be a leader, and the laissez-faire leadership. The Navy SEALs are known for this because they are an organization where everyone can be a leader. And last of all, a very important leadership is the leadership that is called paternalistic, what I call impressionistic leadership, where you lead through example. where you lead through. So if I want people to be on time, I got to be on time first. So children have to see that we function from all these four depending on the situation. The next slide will show you the directions of leadership. And this is interesting because it's in all directions, downward, upward, and lateral. Now, children are excellent at leading down. They can tell their juniors to have a haircut. They can tell their domestic staff to come on time or to tidy up their room. They are also very good nowadays in managing upwards. School kids can go to their headmaster or principal's office and tell them what is wrong and that they want a holiday or that they, are not understanding a certain lesson. But the problem comes in lateral leadership. Can these children tell their peers that they're doing something wrong? And I think it's important that teachers help children to handle the leadership that is lateral. That's where you need real leaders are people who can handle their own peers. So even as teachers, we can go up to our head, we can talk to our junior teachers, but can we lead our contemporaries, people who have had our experience? Also, if you look at the fourth dimension, and that is learning to lead oneself. Now, how do we teach leadership skills? Now, the least effective way, I think, is by lecturing or reading out leadership skills or telling them stories of leaders. Although I must say that I did hear a lecture by a gentleman called Ben Walden once, who travels the world teaching leadership from the lessons in Shakespeare's Henry V. And he's the most wonderful speaker. You could even Google him. He teaches all about leadership skills through Shakespeare's Henry V. A slightly more effective way to teach leadership is through experiential learning and games. Now, for example, when I worked with INME, which is India's experiential learning company, we took adolescents into the wild places and placed them in unfamiliar and alien situations. It's important that children leave their comfort zone and live in a zone where they don't understand. They don't understand the wilds when it turns dark. And that's when you create situations and see how they respond. And then, of course, with feedback and advice, we can teach them something. Even more effective method is by modeling the behavior that I would like to see in children. And parents and teachers are great role models. They watch us and see how we react in situations like traffic jams, in neighborhood quarrels. They see their fathers and mothers show leadership traits, and they tend to pick up the type of styles that we would use. But I think that the best way to develop leadership skills is to lead ourselves. I recently watched a video where the US Navy Admiral was talking to a group of college grads on leadership. And he started to tell them that leadership begins by putting one's bed. When you get up in the morning, you got to put your bed. It starts from there. And what we have to also teach children is to have the ability of stepping back and pausing when faced with a situation. Because what we want is a response and not a reaction. We want a reflected, studied response. Now, there needs to be a gap, a pause between the stimulus and the response. Now, if the gap is too small, we are probably reactive. But if we give ourselves time to reflect and become aware of the situation, we are probably responding to a situation. Now, if you look at this diagram that's come up, leadership is all about how we respond to a situation and not react. In the first circle, there are three circles here. The inner circle is our conditioning. This is what we are born with. This is what we are brought up by. This is what we learn when we are young. All of us have a certain conditioning. And the second circle is consciousness. This is our self-awareness. What have we learned about ourselves as we have matured? This contains our experiences and our past situations. And when we are faced with a situation, our conditioning has to go through consciousness before we come out with a certain type of conduct. Conduct is the behavior, the outcome of the situation. Now, in this diagram, the second circle is very, very thin. So it's most likely that we would react rather than respond. But if you see the next diagram, the middle circle is much, much thicker because we have a heightened consciousness. Now, in this diagram, the filter is rather thick. So we've stepped back, and therefore our response to a situation is going to be more mindful, and our conduct is probably going to be more appropriate to the situation. And the situation is as we face it in the here and now. And therefore, one of the things that we have to deal with our children is, how do we become conscious? How do we get to know ourselves? Self-knowledge is very, very important in leadership. Are we comfortable with who we are? Now, a lot of adolescents will follow their peers and smoke or probably indulge in substance abuse. But it's the person who is comfortable not doing it, is comfortable standing in his own shoes. He doesn't want to join the group. These are the people who have more self-discipline, are likely to get it, who are likely to get up earlier in the morning, who are likely to balance their lives with reading and physical activity and academics. So self-leadership is also about learning to love ourselves, learning to accept ourselves, being comfortable with who we are. And therefore, there's less chances of us being swayed and being moved by the group. I also want to end with 5 qualities that we as teachers should instill in our children. Whenever we do something, or we tell our monitors or our class prefects to do something, they must have a clear idea of why they are doing it. It's the why that's important. The Greek armies were not much, in fact, they were much smaller than some of the armies they defeated, but their why was very strong. They wanted to spread Greek democracy and their values elsewhere. And therefore, the why of why you do something has to be very, very important. The second is that all leaders must have a clear reason of why they do things. Discipline of how to do it, how to do something is your game plan. And the ethics and values that you're going to use in cultivating your game plan. In stopping bullying in school, are you going to be the bigger bully? Is that your game plan? It won't work because you can't stop bullying by being the bigger bully. So the how is the ethical aspect of how you're going to do it. And the last is the consistency of what. Whatever you do, there has to be consistency. Supposing you're going to work with eradicating substance in school, substance abuse, you need to have a plan to work with the school counselors, to set up a confidentiality pattern, work closely with the head of school, etc. And lastly, a third point is that leaders need a following. Now, people will only follow leaders if they trust you. So trust must be established before anyone will make a decision to follow you. And trust is a feeling that begins to emerge when we have a sense that another person is driven by things other than by his own self-gain. We must earn trust. We must teach our children to earn trust by communicating and demonstrating that we share the same values and belief as the others. Fourth, communication is all about speaking. It's not all about speaking, it's about listening as well. We need to listen far more than we speak. And the fifth and the last point is leadership is about serving others. It's not about rank and authority that makes people leaders. There are people who have no authority, but are considered leaders. They're in jail, but they are leaders. They go there first. They risk before everyone else does. They choose to sacrifice. Leaders are people who sacrifice so that their people may be safe, protected. And the important thing is, the latest buzzword now is servant leadership. If I'm a leader, then I've got to be able to serve. It's not about how much I can get, it's about how much I can give. And with that, I hope I have set the ball rolling for our expert panel to take it up. Thank you very much, Subhayu, and over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. You not just set the ball rolling, you made it roll quite to the boundary rope, keeping with our cricket metaphors with every beginning. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Well, our next speaker today is Achin Bhattacharya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was the director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. He is a fellow of the ICAI and a member of CPA Australia. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you. Achin, can you hear us?
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I guess there's some.
Achin, there seems to be a drop in the connectivity at your end. Well, we'll just give him a couple of seconds to join back.
Shubhayu, can you hear me?
Yeah, Achin, I can hear you. I don't think we can see you yet. Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yes, much better. I'll stop my share now.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I once again welcome all of you to today's session on a topic which perhaps has defined the course of the world as nothing else: leadership. One single and simple word, but if you look at the impact has always been humongous. Now, leadership begins with a smaller but a more powerful word: lead. The entire civilization has found new ways, new directions, and higher hopes with this simple, unassuming word across generations. Now, what is leadership? How do we define leadership? Each one of us, when we hear the word leadership, each one of us has our own take on the word. When we look at a leader, or the way we envisage a leader, or the way we define leadership, we all have our own individual take regarding leadership. To me, leadership is about ensuring that the other person is able to perform to his or her ability, to ensure that the other person really improves, to motivate the other person, to inspire, to motivate, to lead. Leadership to me is about creating more leaders. It is really important that as far as leadership is concerned, it's really important that we lead by example. Leadership is not only about proving your own worth, showing how great we are as a leader. Leadership is about giving confidence to the other person that yes, he or she can do it. Any leader, the success of any leader, I guess, should be measured by the kind of impact he or she makes in the lives of others. Now, when we talk of leadership, normally what comes to our mind are great world leaders, politicians, great world leaders. But I believe leadership is a far more all-encompassing subject. We need leaders in each and every area of our lives. Imagine a country which is in the middle of an economic recession. And imagine the kind of impact that business leaders have in creating jobs, in order to ensure that there's a cycle of demand and supply that kicks off, in order to ensure that things improve. Now today, as we are in the middle of this pandemic, imagine the kind of impact scientists have when they're working on this particular vaccine that all of us are looking forward to. That's thought leadership, right? And no words are enough to describe the impact. The impact is so humongous. Imagine leaders in sports, in the world of sports. Imagine the kind of leadership that a World Cup winning captain brings to the table when his or her country wins the cup. Any game, be it soccer, cricket. So leadership to me is all encompassive. But of course, when we discuss about leaders, as I told you, first and foremost, what comes to our mind are great political leaders, visionaries, people who have actually shaped the course of our destiny, people who have actually made an indelible mark on global history. And that it is about vision of that one man or woman and how much impact that had as far as society is concerned, be it our world was, be it industrial revolution, be it agrarian revolution, be it the kind of changes that we've witnessed. Whenever I hear the word leader, the first picture that comes to my mind is that of the father of our nation. I think the kind of impact that Mahatma Gandhi had, not only in shaping the destiny of this particular nation, but as far as global history goes, as far as the kind of impact he had. I remember one quote by Nelson Mandela when he said that India is Mahatma's country of birth and South Africa is his country of adoption. So that's the kind of pride people all over the world took in him. People who followed his vision, like Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, there's no doubt about it that whenever we hear this particular word, leader, what exactly and instantaneously come to our mind? Also, some other great visionaries, be it Winston Churchill, be it Roosevelt, be it George Washington history. And it's really interesting to see, it's really interesting to read about the autobiographies and see one single quality in all of them. They not only had a vision, but they believed in their vision in the face of all adversities. Even when the entire world stood against them and told them they are wrong, they stuck to their belief. And not only they stuck to their belief, they had that magical gift of being able to inspire and take others along in the journey. So I guess leadership doesn't start with me. Leadership always starts with the word you. I think Birds very rightly mentioned that a leader needs to have followers. Now, when we say followers, followers don't necessarily follow a leader. They don't follow a leader. His or her goal only when they believe in the cause.
Achin, sorry to interrupt, but we are losing you from time to time because
Take
of the
their
connectivity.
cause as they're empowered by the cause. 1 second. Is it now or?
No, it's still quite bad.
Give me a moment.
Sure.
Hello, is it better now?
The audio is quite clear. It's the video that's stuck.
Video is stuck. Fine. So let me do one thing. Let me switch off the video in that case.
Sure.
If that is a challenge. Is the audio fine?
No, it's actually quite garbled right now.
It's choppy. So might be a little bit of internet issue.
Yeah.
Off and on. Okay. But without video, I think it should be a little better.
Yep. Let's give this a try.
Yeah. So I think so what I was referring to. No, I think as far as leadership is concerned, so we were discussing about some world leaders. We were discussing about how leadership is important not only in politics or global history, but across all verticals. Now, coming to how to develop leadership as an attribute, are leaders inborn or can leadership as a trait be imbibed? Can leadership be really taught? Can we really teach someone to be a leader? I think these are very relevant questions. I remember one of Martin Luther King's very famous quotes where he said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." Please notice that Martin talks about becoming silent to face every new challenge in life. It's important that one inculcates the notion of leadership in oneself first before it can be shared with others. Self-resolve definitely helps build this grit of holding up a cause or a thought that no one else believes in. It therefore definitely speaks for an uncompromising and fearless attitude to counter all hurdles in life. If you look at schools as leadership hubs, I think it is really important because those are formative years whose bearing or whose impact is lifelong. And for years, schools have actually served as center points for grooming leadership. Esteemed educators have their own ways. They set examples to school students on outstanding leadership skills. Now, students in their formative years, definitely they love to follow examples of great teachers. So teachers always are a source of inspiration, right? Apart from parents, I think teachers' impact on the child is maximum. So small activities in school, for instance, if you look at extracurriculars, if you look at sports as an activity, if you look at any kind of group activity, they're very important the way they are conducted and their impact in developing leadership skills. Also schools which are involved in community service. reaching out to nearby communities, doing social work, ensuring that create a positive impact, sizable impact. So these are places where really leadership skill comes in. And I think it is important to start early and it's important to set examples. And as we were discussing, the leadership is more than me, leadership is always about you. So that entire thought process, that chain of thought, setting that in initial stages, ensuring that students, they actually learn how to look at things from the other person's perspective. How do they learn to take divergent views and take everyone along in the journey? A simple thing like how a class monitor is able to bring discipline in the class. A simple thing like a school prefect, how he or she conducts himself or herself. Group activities, projects. I think these are fantastic avenues to not only imbibe leadership skills, but also to nurture them. And the impact is lifelong, as we discussed. Thus, leadership, therefore, is about inspiration and creating result. It is not about making others feel that you are a leader, but ensuring that your teammates understand that they have the capacity to become a leader. Do they believe that they have a capacity to become a leader? And as we're aware that it's a continuous journey. It's not about one incident, but it's about a continuous journey. So I believe the role of schools or the role of teachers in creating leaders is very important. And considering the fact, the kind of world we are moving to, a kind of world where we all understand that application of knowledge is so important, the kind of world where we understand social skills are so important, where working with colleagues from across the world in global teams, various ethnicities, is so important. A world where turnaround times that is practically becoming real time across the globe, is becoming so competitive. So I think leadership as a skill is invaluable. And as we discussed, we need leadership in each and every aspect of life, in every single aspect of life. It's not only about political leaders. If a great new commissioner of police comes and if he ensures that law and order comes back to a city where earlier there was trouble, he's a great leader in his own right. A simple traffic cop who is standing in the intersection where always there's a commotion, always there's a traffic snarl, is able to ensure that traffic is smooth. He's able to ensure that because he doesn't let anyone else park their vehicles in non-designated spots. That's leadership, right? And during these troubled times, when we see and when we all understand that none of us can exist in isolation, the entire world is so well interconnected, and that's very clear during these troubled times. And these are times when such kind of exemplary skills, be it in terms of industry, be it in terms of medical fraternity, be it in terms of our frontline workers, health workers, for fighting this battle on behalf of all of us, be it in terms of media for their honest and selfless reporting. I think these are times when these tests are really put to test, when the skills are really put to test. So I think leadership is really a great skill, and I look forward to hear from our esteemed panel with regard to their thought process on this very important topic. I'm really sorry for the connectivity issues, because of which I understand that some parts of my deliberation, all of you might have missed. But I really look forward to deliberations with the panel. Thank you, Shubhayu. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Achin. Again, our sincere apologies for the lack in connection, but I still think most part of that wonderful presentation got across to everybody here. Thank you for that. We shall now move on to the next important part of our presentation today, the panel discussion. We have with us today two eminent panelists. I will quickly introduce them to you before inviting them to start the discussion. We have with us Ms. Anita Paul. Ms. Anita Paul is the principal of the Billabong High School in Jabalpur. Previously, she was head of school at the Indus World School, Gurgaon, and the senior vice principal at APJ School International Wing, South Delhi, where she was handling both the IGCSE and IBDP divisions. Prior to adopting the mantle of senior vice president, she had served as the vice principal of Vidya Gyan School, which is a Shiv Nadar Foundation's philanthropy initiative, which is a rural leadership academy that nurtures high achievers from economically backward sections. Vidya Gyan is India's first rural leadership academy for meritorious and underprivileged students from 75 districts of Uttar Pradesh, and before that, she was the head of Department Humanities for IBDP and IGCSE, and a teacher of business management, economics, and coordinator for theory of knowledge at GD Goenka World School, Gurgaon. Her career spans over 28 years, and she has held teaching and administrative positions at Welham Girls School, Dehradun, Woodstock, and GMIS Bali in Indonesia. We also have with us Dr. Sujata Sahu, who is the principal of the DAV Public School in Pokhareput, Bhubaneswar. She is a National Awardee Principal, an Administrator, an Educationist, and a Research Fellow. She's had 28 years of experience in teaching in DAV Public Schools in Bhubaneswar and 20 years of experience as Administrator in DAV Public Schools in Bhubaneswar. She has 2 years of experience as Regional Director of DAV Schools of Odisha. She has attended several projects in CBSE as resource person for programs in life skill, value education, gender sensitivity, etc. She has done research on the fiction of Ruskin Bond, a critical study, and has conducted sessions in CBP for teachers in English, CCE, and classroom management. She has been actively associated with different school activities like organizing blood donation camps, facilitating old age homes, and associated with relief work in different natural calamities and helping the victims and the needy. She has been an active jury member for different educational interview boards and presently serves as the Assistant Regional Officer for a group of DAV institutions of Odisha. Ms. Paul, Dr. Sahu, it's a privilege to have you both with us today. I will now stop the share, start the camera so that we can get on with the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for being here. Dr. Sahu, Ms. Paul, welcome to this discussion. What I would request you to do is, before I ask you some questions, to have your take on leadership.
Okay.
Ms. Paul, if you can start with you.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be back with Notebook. And Subhayu, thank you for introducing with such kind words. I completely agree with what Philip and Achin have started, and they've rolled the ball for our today's session. I actually wanted to start with Martin Luther King Jr., which actually Achin has also been quoting. And I always felt in his words, that a genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus. So as teachers, as educators, we always see that, when we go on the table for collaborative discussions, for discussing any minute, new thing that has to be adapted, especially during the pandemic, it becomes a great challenge to bring everyone together. When I say everyone together, it means our parents, our management, as well as our teachers and our students. So it's become very different as compared to our when we were having our classroom teaching, because there it was hardly the parent involvement, hardly a management involvement. Management was there, yes, finances, budgets, infrastructure, etc. But now everybody has a say in creating anything that has to be brought into the classroom. So a leader has become a very centralized person, where that person is important, yes, but needs other people to take on the mantle of leadership and bring, like it's like a wheel, that all the spokes of the wheels have to come together and align together with that center, so that the wheel can be put into motion. So I completely agree with what Martin Luther said, that it's not that I have to say something as a leader and get it done. It's bringing everybody together, creating a consensus and moving forward. And that's what we are facing today, and we are seeing that happening. And let me tell you, amazingly, I've seen leadership qualities in those people that we least expected. They have come up for the challenges. They have come up with brighter, beautiful ideas to garner that kind of collaborative love for learning and teaching. and has kept the spoke of that wheel in movement. So I would say that leadership is something that creates that kind of bond and that creates that kind of confidence amongst everybody to bring everything together to create a movement. So my take on leadership would be everybody has that quality. It's just that how to bring it together and make it beautiful. So I leave it to Sujata to give her points on that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Sahu, over to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Anita. Before I begin on leadership, good evening and warm greetings to all the panelist members and the viewers from the Holy Land of Lord Jagannath, Odisha. Thank you, Notebook, for giving me an opportunity to be a part of the weekly webinar. And thank you, Shibayu, for setting the ball rolling. Today's topic is on leadership. And already Mr. Philip has discussed about the difference between a leader and a boss and how to carry forward as a leader. And Mr. Achin has discussed leadership in a global context. And Anita ma'am has already told about the leadership characteristics of a leadership. Well, I'll be discussing leadership at the school level, I must say. A leader is one who shows the way, paves the way, and goes the way. In a school, we consider each one of us as a leader. Now, everyone is not a born leader, I must say, but during the course of our journey, some of us may be due to our traits, or we follow a role model in front of us, and then we become leaders. But if you talk about leadership in the present context, things have become very, very different. As a lot of competition is there. The world has become volatile. And for that, we need to train ourselves, to equip ourselves with the latest things in order to become an able leader. Leaders are everywhere, I can say. Some are bad leaders and some are also good leaders. It's not always that the good leaders are there in the society or bad leaders are there in the society, but it is the good leaders whose silence makes the society a different one, which empowers the bad leader. But all said and done, if we are able to carry forward and if we are able to take our team forward in the right direction, rather being a leader, but by being a facilitator, by paving the way, by being in the forefront, I'm sure others will follow us smilingly. And that's my takeaway on leadership.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, now a little bit about today's format. I am the ignorant one. I will be the devil's advocate, and I will ask you questions for which you will have every right to scream at me, and feel free if you want to. My first question is to Dr. Sujata Sahu ma'am. Ma'am, we live in a world where STEM is given a lot of importance, right? Science, technology, engineering, and machinery, mechanics, management. Well, in this world, leadership qualities are much softer. A great leader perhaps has more of social science knowledge, more of communication ability than the knowledge of Pythagoras theorem. How do you reconcile the two? Because as a parent, I believe parents would still be knocking on your door and saying, will my son get into IIT?
I would like to say that before we go into the STEM, let me tell you something about a little bit of this VUCA world. If you see in the present day scenario, the level of competition that the children face and the type of exposure they come across, it becomes imperative to develop the leadership qualities among them in order to make them win the rat race, or I'll say the survival of the fittest. The world is changing at a fast rate. And in this VUCA world, we should prepare our children to know the volatility, uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity in the context of uncertainty. We should prepare them for many alternative realities, challenges, and issues as possible. Now, coming back to the STEM, which has become very, very important with Atal Tinkering Lab installed in many of our schools. Thanks to Niti Aayog for giving an opportunity for all the schools for this Atal Tinkering Labs and all. Now, let me tell you, STEM learning, it is based on the idea of teaching the meaningful skills to the young innovators in these 4 domains of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. If we go a little way from the STEM and come to the word STEAM, where art is also integrated. And that's a very soft skill, I must say. Without that A, the STEM loses its meaning, or we might be only teaching the hard skills to the students when we teach STEM, but when we come to the STEAM part of it, we are teaching imbibing the soft skill to it. Now, this STEM education, it develops a critical thinking skills in our students. It creates science literacy, and it enables the next generation to be innovators. At school level, we try to do a little bit of this STEM technology in our classroom itself. In our online classes also, we try to do it when we assign projects to our students, preparing them for the exhibitions, or when we prepare our students for various science exhibitions, maybe it's the Inspire Award, the Manak Award, or whatever it is. Besides this academic, where the theory part is there, but only the theory part will not help them to become a good leader who can imbibe the skills into it. So the STEM technology is very, very important. When they are preparing the students for these exhibitions, we are teaching them to practically do the experiment. And when they work as a team in collaboration with the peers or with the teachers, they actually learn the critical thinking, they learn team building, and that enables them to develop the social skills, the emotional skills. And when I'm talking about the emotional skills, I will say that when we make an attempt for any project or for any model, we may not succeed in one go. And then as students, when they have not tasted the failure, they might become depressed. And here where the emotional skills come into action, the teachers or the mentors or the guides, the parents who are there, they can support them. That let's learn from our failures, let's learn from our mistakes, and let us pick up the threads from where we have crashed down, and then again revive. Have patience, have endurance, give them motivation, pamper them, have patience, listen to them, and facilitate them with some ideas so that they can once again spring up and work upon it. So parents here have got a great role to play. When they are sitting in the dining table, parents should teach the children not to win always, but to face.
Ma'am, can I interrupt you just for a second?
Yes.
I have some more questions about the parents. So if I can park your points about parents just for a little few minutes,
Fine.
because I want to get across to Anita ma'am
Okay.
and get her inputs on this STEM aspect of things, because this is something that baffles me.
Yes.
I went through the conventional school engineering MBA thing. By the end of it, I saw incorporate the best leaders were people who could tell you about Hitler's strategies and had phenomenal wealth of literature knowledge. Ma'am, your take on this? Ma'am, you're on mute.
Are you asking to me?
I'm actually asking to Anita ma'am.
Sorry.
Yes,
Yeah,
no
I
worries.
unmute myself.
Thanks, ma'am.
So Bhayu, so personally, I have grown as a leader under the leadership of my mentors and my, principals where I have worked or I have studied under. And one thing that I always found very common amongst them was that they were very giving, and I've tried to imbibe that in my way of working with my team, to give. When you learn to give, and it comes only if you have that understanding and that compassion of giving, and it comes only from studying a lot of literature. So being, as you said, I was a business studies teacher and an economics teacher. It drove me away from that, and it brought me to a place where I went into literature, and I did my master's in literature. And I did a search, and I went around the world visiting places of where I could find, and most of it was in England. because we tend to fall back on, the literature which comes from there, whether it was Charles Dickens or whether it was Shakespeare, and you start imbibing those. And when you learn from their stories, where their stories had come from, because if you read Shakespeare, it'll tell you how it was done to motivate, some kind of leaders there to take on a certain role and mantle, and to also to show the queen and the king that they could have negative sides also as a leader, whether it would be Macbeth or whether it would be Merchant of Venice. So Merchant of Venice is a base for when we do economics, when we do banking, so you connect it with, when Shylock and Antonio is doing trading, and they are money lenders of different kinds, different sorts, and then you connect that. So when you do that, you really need to understand that whenever we teach or whenever we become leaders, it also has certain qualities that we imbibe from others, and it can only come when we read a lot. So I always emphasize on that reading is an important skill. And when you're talking about STEM or STEAM, when you put an A also in the STEM, it's not that literature or studying about any historical aspects or whatever is going to undermine math, science, or those kind of technical studies. It only enhances it, right? Because it gives you that perspective. For example, if we study today the gravitational pull, or we study Newton's law, we also know that they were human beings, you know, that they experience certain eureka things in their minds when certain things happened, and that's when they put them in record and brought it to the classroom. Uh, Respecting Sujata ma'am, that tinkering labs have come in, but let me tell you, for the last 7 months, those tinkering labs are feeling very sad because they are closed. So, but that does not undermine that that the children will not be able to understand scientific values which can be used in real life. We did a case study on our own children. We gave them things to work on, and it was a simple activity. I'll give you a very simple example where you don't need these tinkering labs, or you don't need too much knowledge of physics and maths or chemistry, but we gave them a real simple case study where we said, we leave you on an island, and you have to survive. There's a difference between living and survival. And we also told them that pandemic has taught us that, earlier, if somebody was telling you to go out to the road and pick up a stone and bring it to the home, a simple action, you would have done that without even thinking twice. But here, thinking is not going to be there. It has to be a no, because there is a danger of losing life. Now, that is a real life skill that has to be brought into their minds, and to give them that empowerment of understanding, and as Philip also explained, to move back, to start thinking more, to critically analyze things and then move forward. So STEM and STEAM is an amalgamation of a lot of things. It's not only that, as we traditionally say, science students are the best, or the science people are the best because they know everything. No, I disagree with that. Economics is a subject which is a science and an art. So I'm very proud to be part of that community where I say, okay, I am a science person also, and a humanities person also, and a commerce person also. So I have a very different perspective. We need to make the children understand that there is a beautiful amalgamation of all these studies together to understand. So the basics have to be very clear. The skills have to be very clear, and critical thinking is of utmost importance right now, considering what we have faced for the last 7 months and 8 months, and I don't know how many more months till the there's any kind of injections or medicines which are available, and how long will that be effective also. So the child needs to get that empowerment in his mind to think, and there's nothing wrong or right when you allow that that openness, open-mindedness about accepting what the child perspective is, because sometimes leadership would come from a very unknown source. It's not that just because you are in a position you're a leader. A leader is a person who dreams, and he dreams to achieve certain things. So if you lose out on dreaming and lose out on hope, you're left with nothing. Then you have people like Mr. Trump, who says things but doesn't do those things, and leaves us with a little uncertainty of what's the future, because he's a leader of somebody who's been looked upon by the rest of the world. So as Sujata said, you could have good leaders and bad leaders, but not every leader is good or bad. They have a mix of good and bad. What comes up and what comes out is situational. I would believe that. So I leave it on that. So I completely respect, the science people think that, STEM is the best part, but I would rather give my vote to STEAM, because I definitely feel that you need to understand your surroundings, and you can only do that if you have an understanding of literature and history. So I leave it on that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Uh, Sujata ma'am, unless you want to respond to that, I will come back to you on the point of parents.
Yes. Thank you, Anita ma'am. I would say that this Atal Tinkering Labs, they are not closed, but they are more. They have become more active. Now it is online. More number of competitions are happening. More number of students are participating, and now they are conversing in other states also, in other countries also, like this CIDES competition.
Sujata ma'am, full respect to what you just said. I did not mean it is closed as in it's closed. It's physically closed. Children cannot enter the lab right now because of certain restrictions. But yes, that's what I'm saying. So there's another way of using our knowledge of science through, as you said, online competitions and online discussions and those kind of things. But that's what I'm saying. Today, world has become more virtual. It's not physical.
Yes.
That was what I meant.
Yes. Now it's become more virtual, and we all have tuned to those virtual surroundings, virtual classes, those virtual activities and all. I sometimes wonder, when this pandemic will be over and we will be all physically present, whether it will take us some time to come back to this from this new normal. I sometimes sit and wonder, because we are so tuned to this technology, so tuned to this online, everything is online, exploring those new apps, those new assignments, how to go about it. I sometimes wonder when this is going to end and for how long we are going to carry about it.
Right. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Subhayu and Achin's team comes up with AI quick and with 3D presentations in the classroom, because Notebook is very quick in adapting these new changes. So we may just have technology in a different form in the classrooms also.
Yes, and that is what CBSE is also emphasizing it from class 6.
Yes.
They want AI to be introduced, and all these subjects also. So we too are also eagerly waiting to have those skill subjects in our schools once it opens. And that is what is very, very essential. Because if you talk about the national curriculum NEP 2020, which has come as a very good ray of hope, especially in the school environment, where most of the parents, students, and teachers, and as educators also, we were thinking in terms of marks, in terms of academics also. We were never giving importance to the other co-curricular activities. We were not trying to listen to what the student innate qualities the child is having. But thanks to this NEP 2020, where all the importance things which a child requires has to be dealt it in the school level itself, where curriculum, it is only 20% out of those 360-degree, and the rest is all extracurricular activities. So I'm very sure once that NEP is implemented in the true spirit, hopefully very soon, maybe it will take a couple of years once when the national curriculum framework comes out, and then hopefully all of us are eagerly looking forward to implement NEP 2020 in the right spirit, and students also will enjoy.
Right. Yes, Subhayu, I think we'll end your question on that note. See, because I will not refute what she said for CBSE. I am not doing CBSE, so I will not refute on that. We've already been doing that for Cambridge and IB. So I'll leave it at that. I think so. It's a wonderful thing that Indian curriculum and national curriculum is accepting that fact that skill learning is more important than just rote learning. So that's a beautiful thing. So I'll leave on that.
Yes, ma'am. And to answer your previous question, yes, AI is something that we are working on. And that is all I'm going to give out right now on a public forum.
Okay. We're looking forward to that.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah.
Sujata, ma'am, if I may come back to you on the point about parents that you are making, because my next question was about parents.
Yes.
I understand you are the regional director for some of the DAV institutions.
Sorry, I'm the assistant regional director. Sorry, Sibai.
Sorry, ma'am. So, ma'am, in Odisha, I know some of these DAV institutions are inside NTPC townships.
Yes.
And NTPC has a few DAV schools.
Yes.
I was talking to somebody very senior at NTPC, and he said one of our biggest problems is that a large part of our parents all come from a similar background.
Yes.
They all come from that NTPC background. They're NTPC employees, engineers who want their children to also become the same and kind of rise through the same ladder, right? Your take on what role parents play in this milieu? Because every parent would by default want their child to become a leader.
Yes. If you talk about today's education is a tripolar system of education where the student, teachers, parents, they constitute the three important pillars on which the foundation of a child's future rests. I understand parents have a very vital role and their views are very dominating, but then simultaneously teachers also should complement and supplement to it if we want the child to be a better human being. And the stronger the pillars, the better future awaits the child. Because if you see, a child spends around 6 hours in the school and the rest 18 hours at home. And so he's very much influenced by what the parents say and the parents does. And he sees in his or her parents as a role model. And now in this present day COVID-19 scenario, if you see, the role of the parents has grown manifold. The school is at the home now, as rightly said earlier. Now they're able to see everything, what the teachers are teaching, the way the students are answering and all. And thus can help the child navigate through this challenging, this competitive and this dynamic world. But at the same time, they have to be a little bit kinder, a little bit gentler. They need to be more just, more inclusive and more sustainable. And that's a new kind of reality for a better tomorrow instead of becoming very aspirant or very domineering or trying to put their thoughts or their views on the children. Now, all this can be done when they sit in the dining table, maybe in the dinner time. The parents, they can teach the children. It's not always good to win, but sometimes to face failure also, and then how to come out of it successfully, stronger and more confidently. That's very, very important. As teachers and as parents also, we need to teach our children that failure is the pillar of success. So instead of giving up or getting frustrated when they encounter a challenge or when they are not able to meet the goals or when they are not able to find a solution, we should be very patient with them. And sometimes what happens as parents, we act as a very, very protective shield rather than being a true crusader. We should engage the child in figuring out how they can handle challenges and how they should take care of the opportunities and how they can figure out what works and what doesn't work for them. And then we were talking before the session about problem solving. The next important thing I would like to say is about critical thinking. Parents should teach the child how to observe, how to analyze, and how to think and come up with smart solution. That is very important. I just stressing on my word smart solution, not just ordinary solution. A child need to work smart and not work hard always. And this can be imbibed within him by the parents, by encouraging them to work in a team, by allowing them to do some simple household exercises like managing siblings, helping the mother in the daily chores, organizing family or friends outing, or by allowing him or her to go on an excursion or study tour. Maybe it is organized by the school, or if it is organized by the peers also. With only passive supervision, I'm not denying the supervision should not be there, but every now and then they should not restrict them. But as passive supervision, they should see what is happening and whether it is leading them in the right direction. So in this case, it will help the child to grow his or own interpersonal as well as intrapersonal skills also. And they will also learn to coordinate and cooperate with each other. And at the same time, they will learn also to take care of the sentiment of others. So this helps them in building about the teamwork also. And most important, we talk about is the self-reliance. Now, this is a very important skills which we teach also at school, but parents also need to focus on it. That makes a child more confident and it helps to grow his self-esteem. He grows as an individual when he takes part in the family discussion and when he gives his views. So it is obviously good on the parts of the parent when any decision is taken at home. Let us involve the children into it. Maybe we might think that children at this age may not be confident enough, may not be mature enough to give the views, but we should not sideline it also. Because these small things will gain the self-confidence and they will gain the power to deal with multifarious adversities of the world. As I told you that this is a VUCA world, we should train our children to be more, to address the complexity of the world, to see how the world is becoming very, very ambiguous and how to come out of it. So this is very, very important to teach our children self-reliance. And then another thing I would like to say, which the parents need to take care of it, is effective communications, which many of us, we ignore it as parents. Even in the schools, when we try also to take care of it, teachers also to some extent, they don't take the onus of totally training the children in effective communication. The mother tongues comes in between, howsoever we try to avoid it. I'm not telling about in the elite schools, but if we talk about the schools in general, I know Anita ma'am will not agree to it because she's leading a different school, but if I'm talking about the general school, the mother tongue, influence of the mother tongue is always there. So as parents, we should also try to see that the communication skill of the children is gradually modified, trained at the house itself. We should allow them to express. We should allow to receive and create favorable public opinion. And the parents also should try to develop the child's vocabulary. And when I'm talking about vocabulary, it should not be ornamental. Rather, it should be understandable. And allow the child to speak in English rather than the mother tongue. Because when we talk in mother tongue at home, the influence of the mother tongue sometimes comes in between when they are trying to speak in English, which is a global language. So as parents, they need to take care of all these things. This is what my take on parents' role in training skills to the children.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Anita ma'am, I have a bit of a curveball for you, right? So it's very natural that parents want their children to be leaders. I'll give you a very personal example. This was when I was in class 11 in school. There was an invest teacher ceremony. We had 4 houses, so 2 prefects for each house. A head boy and a head girl get selected, and there's a celebration. And then the principal spends the next half or 1.5 days explaining to a lot of parents why their children did not become a prefect or a head boy or a head girl. I have also been to schools now where I have seen every student walk around with this array of badges across their chest, like some very decorated army officer. How do you manage the parents' expectation? Because for them, leadership is always a position and not the journey of self-leadership that Bharat spoke about.
Right. So let me give you a comparative for that, because I have headed a school which was for underprivileged, and it's just called the Leadership Academy. And there was a lot of thought behind giving it the term Leadership Academy, because my boss there, Mr. Nader, is a self-made man who came from a very humble background from Tamil Nadu. And, when he tells us about his stories, he definitely mentioned once, he said, Anita, you come from one of the best elite place called Dehradun, which is a hub for schools, which has created a lot of leaders from the Doon School or from Vellum Girls. So keep that aside. Each child has that innate quality to be a leader. You need to see how that leader is brought out and about. English is not important. I never studied English, and yet he's one of the billionaires that we know of today who is so successful. And he is so humble when he used to sit in my office and tell me that tomorrow, Anita, I want one of these kids to be the prime minister or the president of the country, and I need to take 5 minutes to go and see them, and I have to take that appointment. That had a lot of weight to that, you know. So those are the children who don't have any say by the parents. All right. So the leadership is brought in by creating and giving them that dream to live and be leaders. Captains are definitely selected there. There is an electoral system where they nominate their candidates from their classes. The peers do that. Then there is a canvassing that happens on the campus, and then there is a election day that happens, and there is a ballot, and then you select. All right. But before the ballot and before the canvassing, there is an interview done, which is a panel interview on the stage done by the peers or by the juniors. Questions are thrown onto their their leaders, chosen leaders apparently, and if they come up with a proper answer or a proper explanation of the required abilities that are looked forward by the peers and by the teachers, then they are given that second step to go ahead and be finalized for their elections, and then that's happened. In a normal school, it would be again the same, I would say, a democratic way of giving that empowerment in the students' hands. And I believe completely in that because I have seen that very successful. And when parents are called, and in front of the parents, you have a panel discussion with all the whims and questions that they have in their mind. Because for every parent, their child is the ruler, the king, or the queen. Okay, you must have been also for your parent, but definitely you need somebody who can pave a path for others to move forward. That's what we've been talking about. That's what Achin also said, and that's what Philip also said, that you have to have a leader who can walk the path with you, right? Not without you or before you. He has to be with you. If he can walk the path with you, that person obviously has that quality which is a niche up than the others. And if you have a lot of discussions and you have an open house, that's why we have open houses. And we have what you in the court system also, if you are doing law, you have a moot court where you have to do a mock of the run of whatever judgments have to be given. Same way, you do panel discussion in school, you invite your parents and let the parents also judge. And now I always and I've always said that parents is another important spoke of the wheel. So we have to change our thinking and alignment. Yes, earlier it used to be sometimes the parents would come back and tell the principal, oh, there was, you liked this person more than the other, that's why you chose, so you had a fancy for this child or whatever. But that's not the reason. Today we see that it's not the leader who has to be on the top, it is the leader who walks the path. So for that, you always have to have a discussion. And for that, the C of the 4 C's of the 21st century communication plays a very important role. And then giving and taking responsibility. And how do you give and take responsibility is how you conduct yourself, right? So your peers are your best judge, right? But let me tell you, I, as a principal, have always told my students who become leaders, it's a very lonely position. You have to do away with your friends and you have to be very unbiased or biased according to the situation. There may be a situation where you need somebody who is very weak in your class or very introverted in your class who needs your support. Then you can be a biased person and say, okay, I will help that person. But that's a positive in a negative. All right. So the person who has this ability to understand and negate his way forward, I think so, is the best leader possible. So when parents understand that, and when parents understand that when we talk, when they see us working as a team and not as me as the principal and my team as my teachers, but me as a teacher and an educator along with my team, I think so that gives them that perspective that things are going in a smoother way. So I haven't had that issues, because I've been trained by my bosses and my superiors in a very different manner, and I've tried to adapt it as possible. But yes, sometimes that feeling of not being a leader, you've not been chosen as a captain, may sometimes become like a bone of contention. But then that is what I'm saying. If you communicate well, if you keep talking, and if you keep giving them also, so if your team also gets empowered along with you as a leader, I think so that's a beautiful story way forward. So even I think so, Subhayu, if you would have been in my team, you would have been as equal as I am in my team, because I would rather believe in what your good qualities are and best qualities to be shared with the others. So if you can do that as a team member, I think so every person has that leadership quality. So I don't think so parents object to that if they understand that. So but to make them understand, definitely you have to have a lot of discussions with them. So you have to involve them. That's why I always say PTAs or PTMs are not only for discussing the result and what your child has done as in marks, but it is also what your child has grown out to be as a, as a leader or a good citizen. So leaders, everybody can't be, but good citizens, everyone can be, and can be flag bearers of your own schools or your own country. So I believe in that. So I'll end on that.
Wonderful, ma'am. Just one correction. My parents were convinced that everybody else's children were doing the right things. Yes, Sujata ma'am, if I could come back to you.
Like to add
Lovely, lovely.
to what Mrs. Anita ma'am has said, yes, like all schools, we do have a school cabinet, and like as parents, interference is always there. Initially, this was there, but then slowly by slowly, we try to expand the school cabinet. We try to involve more number of students so that they learn the skills of leadership right at the school level itself. And right from class 6, we started having those class representative included in the school cabinet also. Like CBSE has asked us to have different clubs. So we also included all those clubs in the school cabinet periphery itself. So the number becomes more. We have 50 numbers in a school, I mean to say in the cabinet, school cabinet. And what we don't only...
I'll add to that, Sujata ma'am, I'll add to that. See, what you're saying is absolutely correct, that giving positions to everyone and then taking them into the cabinet. That's what I'm trying to say. Sometimes some children get that, they feel the pinch because they are quieter people. They're in, they may be introverted. They're not so forward in coming and being vocal, but they are very talented and they never get that exposure. So that bone of contention always remains. So it's our duty and the parents' duty to get that characteristic of that child out and, flower it out. And that can be only done if you can keep talking and communicating. That's what I said. And saying that what you're saying, that you've created so many positions, Philip is there, and I know he will agree with me that Wellams and Doon and all these schools actually have these kind of leadership in the cabinet from grade 6 upward, because we do have that kind of system there. So, but what I tried to tell was to Subhayu was, for the question that he, like a crown with a thorn put it on my head, was, that little bone of contention that that parent has or that child has who's not got that opportunity to get that position. So we all try different systems. As leaders, we try to give them that electoral democratic way of being chosen and being brought to a position, or we just nominate them and then we say, okay, fine, the teachers will decide, the class teachers can decide. But what he's trying to say is, what I understood, if I'm wrong, Subhayu, you can correct me, was the others who are left, right? How they cope up and how the parents of those parents cope up, right? That was what the question was. So I think so, Sujata ma'am, I think so we have to answer that part of the question, of those who have not been selected.
Yes.
Right.
Now, those who have not been selected, now if you ask in a classroom itself, how many of them wants to participate in this school cabinet, obviously the academically bright students, they go back. They want to concentrate more in the studies and all. It's only the proactive ones and the backbenchers, they come up and say, yes, we want to participate. We want to be a part of the school cabinet. While at the same time, teachers want the brightest one to be in the school cabinet. So that in between these backbenchers and these bright ones, we always give preference to the one who really wants to participate, who really wants to do something for the school. And then when we do the selection process, it is not the electoral system or the child's good child or the child good in academics and all. We take the 360-degree into account while we select a child for this school cabinet. We take into the sports activities, we take into the art, music, we take the contribution in the societal work. We also take into account the hand-holding which they had done for the peers, and we also take into account The other, the dealing with the parents, the dealing with the teachers, the dealing with the school property and all. So when everything is taken into account, so we find that everybody is given equal opportunity to take care of the school and to show his or her talent and really can be a part of this school cabinet. So it is not by selection more of, it is by their own way of dealing with the school ecosystem.
So Bhayu, I think so. We'll leave that question on that, and we'll give you an idea to ponder over. And that is that you should get another conversation happening with few student leaders and non-leaders, along with some heads, to see their perspective also, because we need to understand their perspective. And when you do that kind of a discussion, you will get all your answers because it will come from the heart.
Yes.
So we'll leave it on that, Bhayu.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Well, I just have time for one last question. And
Okay.
this is a question that just popped into my head just listening to the discussion here.
Okay.
And this is for both of you. I'll go to Sujata ma'am first. We have seen the evolution of management and leadership happen through the ages, right? We have moved from agriculture to manufacturing, and manufacturing, the classical form of manufacturing, required a lot of people to do a similar thing a similar way, and therefore the need of a leader to kind of make a homologous bunch of people or have people do the same thing. We are slowly moving to a system that is more individual oriented. It was about 10 years back that Oracle as a company instituted a position called the individual contributor within the organization. So given that, my final question is: leadership as a trait overhyped?
Yes, leadership as a trait, if you talk about is overhyped, it's not so exactly so. When we talk about leadership, keeping this in the background, all the leaders, if you talk about maybe the great leaders, right from Mahatma Gandhi to the school leader we talk about, it is not hype. There are some leaders who are silent leaders, I must say. And if we think about them, and if we have trained our children to follow those silent leaders, then I'm very sure the student at the school level itself, they will try to judge after becoming a leader, what's the work they should do and what skills they should inherit in them or they should acquire during the course of the school days. Now, a system of education should be holistic so that it will prepare them not only to make a living, but also to live in a healthy ecosystem, or we can talk about a healthy competitive world where there's a lot of competition and how to survive in that competition, and to develop an attitude of gratitude in them, which reflects the humility, the compassion, and the global responsibilities. Now, for all this to take into account, the mental health is now a very, very important. And I think it's the next major epidemic when we talk about this hype, leadership hype and all, a lot of competition, a lot of issues where the parents start comparing with the children of the neighbors or with the relatives and all. So now the mental health has become a very, very urgent issue, and that's it need to be addressed. And research shows that 1 in 4 youth suffer from some form of mental health because of all these competitions, because of all these attributes of leadership and all. So we need to take care of it. And then with this increasing scope and vividity of education, the competition to prove oneself better than the other, to grab the opportunities at one go, maybe due to the family pressure, due to the teacher's pressure or the societal, to come up to the expectation, children are in a catastrophic situation. So at this point, we need to develop resilience in the children. So developing resilience in children would make them able to manage or to withstand or to recover quickly from a difficult situation and accept failure as a stepping stone for the next attempt. And this can be also done by creating self-awareness among the children. That is, they should understand the strength and weakness, and they should not try to overestimate or to underestimate the abilities, and they stop comparing with each other or with the peers. So this is my take on this traits of the leadership.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Anita ma'am, if we can come to you for the same question. I've
All
been a huge
right.
fan of, yeah, please.
Yeah, no, please finish. Please finish.
I've been a fan of Joseph Conrad's Lord Jim, and
Okay.
you having been a literature student, I'm sure we'll have a
Right.
different take to this. Ma'am, your
Definitely
camera for some reason is off.
is off. Okay, let me just
Yeah.
check. Is it there?
Yeah, perfect now. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So see, as I said, leadership is a very lonely position that you are in when you become a leader, because you have to do away with certain likes and dislikes of yours. You have to have a lot of control on your effectiveness, because you cannot be, with moments of bouts of emotional challenges that happen, maybe in your personal life, or maybe in your school life, or in your workplace. But an effective leader is one who gives that hope and gives that dream, as I said, to his team members and his students, to have a hope of a brighter future, of a place where it is worth living without any kind of malice, hatred. Also, to understand that there is a lot of racial discrimination and stereotyping, to do away with that and cope up with that, because as mental challenge always comes from all these, and Sujata has mentioned that mental challenge. But saying that, leadership is not hyped, I would say, but yes, it is sometimes blown out of proportions, taking into consideration certain kinds of leaders that we have in today's time. Also, I will not quote the old leaders, because we keep studying them in our history books, and we keep seeing a lot of movies on them. But the latest ones, I'll give you three examples. One is Justin. Can you hear
Ma'am,
me?
I think you went on mute for a bit.
All right. So, like the Canadian Prime Minister, I find him very humble, very human, very empathetic towards his people. I find the leader in New Zealand very forthright. I find leaders like Trump, who are very pompous and very throwing their weight around because of the background that they come from, and for them, money speaks the language. We have leaders in our own country. I will not name any particular ones, but definitely when we have leaders here who sometimes say certain things only for the purpose of making it it's a sensational kind of a speech that they give. So that is only to be popular. So we do that that certain leaders be popular, certain leaders do certain things because they are pushed to do certain things. It's not their mind speaking, it's not their heart speaking, but it's somebody's else thoughts that they are perceiving and putting it forward. So leadership definitely has different connotations. Now, what kind of leadership do you want to take over is more important. What you want to take as a role model is very important. So I'll go back to what Sujata had started when we started our conversation, that there are good leaders and bad leaders. So it's not a hype, it's a fight between the right and the wrong, which our own, we know that even life is about right and wrong. So what choices do you make? Do you want to follow the right? Do you follow the wrong? So that is all about leadership. And if you empower your team or your people around you with the thinking, the abilities that you have, and let them be part of your speech, part of your work, part of your life, I think so. Leadership is a very beautiful aspect of one's journey in life, because you do need some people, you do need somebody to take that command over, to follow. If in an army you don't have a commandant, the army will go haywire, firing at everybody without any proper kind of a instruction, or in a proper kind of a planned method. So you have to have somebody to take that control. So I think so, I will leave on that leadership is a beautiful ability to hope, to dream, and to take control, and to take your team or anybody forward along with you. I'll leave on that. I can't hear you, Shubhayu. Your mic
This time
is
I
off.
was on mute. But thank you so much. Thank you for those wonderful thoughts. Sujata ma'am, thank you as well. I think we had one of the most interactive discussions today, and thank you both for that. There is a very interesting question that I will not have the time to take from Mr. Sunny Kumar. It's in the question and answer box. If any of you would want to quickly type out an answer to him, I think he would really appreciate that. With that,
Is
I
that in
will
the
now,
chat box?
that is in the Q&A box, ma'am,
Okay,
at the bottom
Q&A.
of your screen. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just.
He says, may I know something more
I
about
can't
how
see
to,
it.
okay, I'll just read it out in case any of you
Okay.
want to take it. It says,
Okay.
may I know something more about how to make such parents understand who want to bring their children up as leaders, but their words don't really want to be a leader?
Repeat again. I didn't get you the last part of it. By you.
Basically, parents who want children to be leaders and the children do not want to be leaders.
Okay.
What do you do in such situations?
Well, empower them to take responsibility. So the key word is taking responsibility for their actions, for their work, for their thoughts. They should be the ones. For example, if they want a bottle of water, it's their responsibility to see that the bottle is filled properly, it's shut properly, and they keep it at the proper place. So if little things can be inculcated as responsibilities with them, I think so that is a way of training them to be good leaders. So take onus of their own books. If they're reading books, to keep them properly, not throw them around. As Philip said, early in the morning, get up, make your beds. All right. So that is the best trainings to be given. So if you have that attribute of responsibility, you can, the parents will be happy that the child has become a responsible person. The child will be happy because he's getting appreciation for what he's doing. So it has to be both ways. So responsibility does not come like that. One has to give that responsibility, and one has to appreciate once that responsibility is taken care of. So, yeah.
I would just like to add one thing to this question of the parent. Let's not thrust, if the child does not want, let us not thrust upon him that, yes, as a parent, I want you should also become a leader. But in the slow process, in the longer run, let us try to counsel him. Let us read to him stories about good leaders. Let us talk to him about movies where the good leaders are there and the good work done by the leaders. Or let us show them some sports icons who acts as a leader at the time of crisis. And in this process, I'm sure the child will be able to understand the value of leaders, and then maybe at that point of time, he or she may think about becoming a leader. I think I have answered it. Sibai.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you. This was a fantastic discussion. And while we could go on all evening with this, we are actually short of time. And I will have to hand you over to Achin for his vote of thanks. Once again, thank you so much. I think both of you are phenomenal leaders in your respective schools. And
Thank
your
you,
students are lucky
Subhayu.
to have you.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome,
lovely
ma'am.
talking to you, Dr. Sujata.
It's nice meeting you and discussing with you.
So Achin, over to you for the vote of thanks. That's all from me.
Thank you, Shubhayu. Considering the connectivity issue, I'm not switching on my video. I think really great discussion, and the best part of it was the kind of seamless flow of discussion that we saw today, which is really awesome. It was really conversational, and that's the best part of these discussions, exchange of ideas, etc. Now, before proceeding to the word of thanks, I'll just take a minute with regard to Mr. Sunny Kumar's question, which I found really very interesting and insightful. Now, there are two distinct schools of thought. There's one school of thought which believes in leadership as an inborn trait, that it says that leaders don't need to be hyped. They're like celestial bodies, naturally illuminated. And the thriving footsteps of leaders are vehemently felt because that school of thought believes leaders are leaders. But there's also another school of thought which discusses or which speaks about leadership as selfless, leadership as a way of life. I was reading a quote which I really liked. Leaders establish trust with candor, transparency, and credit. So establishing trust, I guess, is one of the most important elements of leaderships. People will follow your vision only when they trust you as a person, and then your vision comes in. And a leader is best when people barely know he exists. So if a leader without making his existence too evident without trying to hog all the limelight. But if he's silent and when his work is done, his aim is fulfilled, his followers will say, his colleagues will say, his team will say, we did it ourselves. So I guess the best part of leadership is to empower others, is to give them the courage to follow their dreams and give them the conviction to come back and say, hey, we did it. I think certain traits like humility, empathy, sense of ownership, volunteering, and sharing, being able to share. And when I say being able to share, I think one of the most important elements of sharing in today's age is being able to share your time with others. Be it your grandparents who really look forward to your knock on the door, coming in and sharing your time with them, sharing experiences. They really look forward to that. Sharing your experience, sharing your stories, sharing your success, and more importantly, also sharing your bad days and learning from their words of wisdom. I think leadership is a much more all-encompassing subject. A lot of aspects go into leadership. I think we really had a great discussion. Bharat sir, thank you so much for leading the entire thing. And the way you started off on leadership, some very important points you made, which I guess I completely agree with in terms of how you look at leadership. Coming to our esteemed panel that we have for the day, Anita ma'am and Sujata ma'am, I couldn't thank you enough. I think some very important aspects you highlighted, including importance of extracurricular activity, involving children in family decisions. That's something that I really like, giving them a sense of ownership, giving them a sense that they are in charge of their life, involving them, taking their inputs. Maybe initial stages, we need to mentor them, we need to guide them, we need to handle them, but let them have a say. Let them come in with their point of view. They should not be mere decision takers, but they should feel that they're being mentored or groomed to be decision makers. I guess some really great points you made, like including expanding your school cabinet, open house discussions. So I think really liked it. I'm sure that our esteemed audience here today evening goes back with a lot of great takeaways. So in fact, another great notebook evening we had, great session we had. I look forward to your continued support in the sessions to come, in the days to come. With this, I sign off. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.
Thank you, Achin.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone.
So Subhayu, can we leave now?
Surely, ma'am. I'll end the session now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you.